Okay, hello. Today we're gonna go over neutral tint, specifically Core's neutral tint. So this isn't really a review, it's more like I'm just kind of sharing a personal experience. Um, so I've been trying to narrow down a personal kind of main palette to as few colors as possible. Like key colors that I really want to learn really well because I already know that I like them. I already know that they're very good for mixes. They're popular, and I've kind of narrowed it down to. I've been trying to fill like my little travel palette here. One of every primary and secondary here, plus a few neutrals. And I had the buff titanium, a raw umber, and then I was between neutral tint and Payne's gray, but I felt like they were a bit too similar. And I also felt like they shouldn't be that similar. And this is something I've wondered about since I first got Core's neutral tint, that it always felt most of the time pretty cool to me. But I do like it in mixes. I've done like a mixing charts and things, and I've seen how it looks. So, I mean, that's nice, but I just feel like, neutral tint should be, neutral. You know what I'm saying? So, I always wondered, am I crazy? Like, what if the big thing I was worried about is I want to learn a few colors really well. What if, but I kept doubting, what if this is not the correct neutral tint? What if I got a kind of like an off mix, or maybe they changed the formula? Because also when I looked on the Core's website, and I saw their own swatch sheet, the color looked a lot more true neutral to me, a lot more warm compared to this coolness. And so what if I grow to really get to know this particular paint really well, and then I need more, I buy another tube, and then that tube also, but that tube then has a different ratio, like maybe they updated it to be more neutral, and then what I've learned is a little out of date or like not as useful. And I liked the color that I saw on their swatches. I feel like I liked it more than what I had. Like, I like the way it mixes, but when I see it by itself, I'm like, am I crazy? It looks cool to me. So I've heard good things about Core's. Like Golden is they're connected. Golden is like the main company. They do acrylics. If you do acrylic painting, you've probably seen their bottles everywhere. They have a great reputation for their customer service, their scientific methods, and all that. So I contacted them just to ask. So have they updated it? Because if they have, maybe they added more PY42 to warm it up. Then I maybe don't want to commit to the tube that I have. Maybe I want to buy another one and see. Or if mine is maybe they every company has had off batches of paint before. Maybe uh, mine was an unknown off batch. There was a permanent Scarlet issue once where they had one batch that was a little off, and they would replace any from that specific code number, like the batch number here. So I asked them about it, and they asked to see a few. They were really nice and polite, and they asked if they could see some pictures so they could kind of gauge um, how if it looked like what they expected. They also said they felt like it was rather cool, maybe cool for my photos at least, and they were kind enough to send me a whole new swatch, like a whole new tube, which I wasn't expecting, and I felt a little guilty because I was really just trying to check, but I was very appreciative, and they didn't just send me another bottle. This is my original. They sent me a few other freebies too, like little sample things. So I thought that was really nice. I was like, whoa. So I want to kind of go over that. I guess it's like a unboxing video. My first unboxing video? I don't know. Okay. But first I wanted to kind of go over what I was going through and kind of the process there. And spoiler alert, by the way, just to get to the end. The new bottle, I feel like it's even cooler than my old bottle, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's not a thing of bottle to bottle, but more the behavior of the paint just as a just due to being a mix and the mix that it is with the granulating paint in there and a warmth that comes out more in tints on the bottom, as well as when how the paint is used, either fresh from the tube or dried out in a pan. But we're going to go into those details when I show you more of the comparisons from what I swatched. So first we're going to go over my original. So, and a bit of a backstory for this is I bought this 24 color core set some time ago, and it was really it's really great. I think it's a really great set. Like the color choices are immaculate. I feel like this is the best curated big set of colors. I like to get the big sets. This 24 color set, Holbein's 60 color set, Magello's 33 whatever pigment set. You know, I like a lot of colors. So I got this one, but most of them, they don't feel curated for like a good, like, because there's so many colors, most of them, they do have a good balance of different colors. This one has some less colors than the big ones that I've got, like a 60 color or whatever, but I feel like every color is very thoughtful from an artistic point of view of having like warms, cools, and neutral and mid-tones of every primary, having some really strong, good secondaries, and then having a really good range of neutrals as well and everything. I know people like to complain about titanium, like having a white paint in big watercolor sets, but I think I don't think it's such an issue for me personally, because when you actually see what a lot of colors, like color mixes from people's brands are, oh, there's a lot of them that have PW6. They have titanium white mixed in there a little, and people like those colors, so it can be useful. It has a niche of its own. There's like lots of pastel colors, more or colors that are trying to go for more of a opaque, creamy appearance, like Naples yellows and things like that. Often will have it. Things like that. Lavenders. So, so that's the set. But what happened was I got this set and I was very happy. I started squeezing them out. You'll notice something about this particular set right here of 6. The tubes are a lot smaller. That's not because I'm using them more. The others are almost full, or even some of them are full. So I ordered this set. I started squeezing out all the paints into my pans, and then I realized as I got here that they were repeats. So I did these, and then I got to this end here. Maybe I should flip this upside down. So once I got to this section here, I realized I think it was this and this were the same colors, or this and one of the two, like the 6-pack. Like you can see that with the card things, somebody accidentally put the same little card thing into twice. So I didn't get any of these in there. I'd already squeezed out half the paint, but I bought it from Amazon, so I asked for a fix. I was kind of hoping that they could just send me the ones that I was missing and like send the ones back that I didn't need or something like that. But you know, Amazon policy and, you know, big company policies, it's been like small Etsy businesses that may be good, but big companies, they don't have time for that kind of thing. So they were like, just send the whole set back and we'll send you a whole new one. At that point, half the bottles were already half empty. So I did a bit of a naughty thing, and I was like, well, maybe there's a chance that this will go back to the company itself, and then they'll see it, and they will have some artists in their staff will be like, oh, well, I can take that home and I get a freebie. But there's also the possibility that, like I've heard from some places, refunded items go straight to the landfill because it's too much effort to return it to the actual place, or they just throw out the half-used shit, or it's like, it's a half-used set, what are they gonna do, manually take it out? Maybe they would have, but I didn't know. And also the half-filled bottle, so I ended up squeezing out the rest of the paint before I sent it back. I squeezed out these, and these, but the extra one of like the duplicate of these or these, I left those full. I hope I hope those went back to Golden and they were able to salvage and use them for another set. I don't know. I hope it didn't go to a landfill, but I don't know. They since I wasn't buying directly from Core or Golden itself, we don't know. They couldn't exactly send me like a personalized note or something like that. That's not how Amazon works. But that's what I did. So I did have an original neutral tint from the first set I got. Then I sent it back after emptying it, and then got another set with a new neutral tint, which I hadn't touched until now. So here, let's see, where is it? Here? No, here. Yes, here. Here is my core set, and the neutral paint in this big full pan here is that original neutral tint. And you can see here these two, I feel like this feels more blue to me than the Payne's Gray, which is strange. In bigger swatches with a larger gradient, I feel like then it shows like the range of the Payne's Gray and the blue comes out in the mid-tone and the tint. While with this, the neutral comes out more in the mid-tone and the tint. But I still felt like, is this correct? I wasn't sure. So then, so that's what I was asking about. And then before I asked, and the main thing that triggered this also was, like I said, I showed my little mini pants here. I was filling these recently. And this one, the neutral tint, I filled it with the new bottle here as well. And then I did some experiments. So with the old bottles, like, I don't know, a year ago or something, I tested on this side neutral tint mixes. And I like all these mixes. I do feel like these are pretty neutral. What was strange and confused me was that when I started comparing this one, these swatches, with the new bottle from the new set, this swatch, I was like, actually these do feel more neutral. Like the color feels different. Is it that the new one is a new formula or a bad batch or what? Then I started comparing here, Payne's Gray versus my newer bottle of neutral tint versus my older bottle of neutral tint. And you see right here at the beginning, the old neutral tint, when I first first used it in the first time since a bit from the dry full pan, look how warm and neutral that looks compared to the new one, which looks very bluish and cool, you know. But then as I started doing it more and more, the new neutral tint, I tested it again because I was like, am I going crazy? Let me check again. Still feeling cooler than the old one. And then I did the old one again, and then this time when I swatched it, it felt cooler than the last time, but still warmer than the new one. Then I swatch it again, and it's warm again. And then same paint, same pan, same everything. Swatch it again, it's warm. Swatch it again, it's cooler. Swatch it again, it's even cooler. These are all the old neutral tint from my old full pan in here. And then I tested the new one again. Still feels cooler than all of these, though, even if these are wildly different consistencies of neutral. Then I tested again with the Payne's Gray. The Payne's Gray. Even the Payne's Gray, it feels like it shifts a little. And then the neutral tint again, the new one. So at this point I was feeling pretty crazy, so I was asking questions. And I also sent them pictures of that as well as some other swatches that I did. Like I did like full page gradient. I've already thrown it in the garbage. Things like that. They were very kind and they sent me a replacement. So, and I want to show what else is in the box as well. So, we've got first a really nice full page, you know, colors, swatches with all the detailed information on there. No pigments on the inside with all the colors, but on the back, they've got all the pigment and the ASTM light fastness versus their own the rating light fastness. Very detailed perfect, beautiful. I love it. I love to have charts and reference material for art materials. This was the bottle itself. They sent me the full 15 millimeter size. Very kind of generous of them. Um, and then there's some paper there to fill it up. And then a few small freebies on the bottom too. So I think I might be testing these on here. Let's see. We've got first two little dot cards here. I have most of these colors already since I did get their biggest set, the 24 color set. But there's some new ones, and so that's nice. And I do want to test some of these. Like I have, like they have the transparent red oxide, diarylide yellow I have, but then the pyrrole medium, the red oxide, the chromium, the oxide green, and the quin violet. These are all new to me for their brand. So I'm happy to see these and want to test these out. I want to put them on my swatch cards, which I just recorded a video for this of making swatch cards, so I have a few like empty ones here, so I might do that here. I might do it later in a different video. Then they have another one, and I have all these. I think these are all from their smaller high chroma set. And this one got stuck on here, but that's there. So all of these colors are already in their main their 24 set as well as the high chroma set. I do kind of wish like it would be nice. It seems like most of the colors like in the smaller sets, like 6 set, 12 set, are colors that they also include in their bigger sets, like the 24 set. So I wish paint companies did have more like a different sets with different colors, so that if you're a collector, you can kind of collect set by set to get a good variety of colors. That would be nice. It seems kind of rare though for watercolor places. I don't know. I feel like that would be a good strategy. But they even include what feels like a very nice quality. And then the last thing they included was examples of their different types of ground, which is, we've got the watercolor ground. And I believe I already have a container of this one. It says they creates an absorbent surface that allows for soft edges and flowing wet and wet techniques. May be applied for a linen-like texture, rolled on for a dappled effect, or scraped on smoothly with a palette knife. You can also lightly wet sand it for like a hot press surface. Can be applied to different materials like canvas and panel. It's basically, all of these are basically going to be like acrylic sludge material to apply to a surface. So you can see the texture here, it's pretty thin, and you can see the clear brush lines. So my experience with this particular watercolor ground, it's got a similar text, like it's the texture that I expect when I do it on my own stuff, but whenever I attempt to use this, I feel like it's not behaving the way that I would want a surface to be to watercolor paint. I think in general, I'm just so picky with the papers and things like that that I don't think I'll ever love any kind of ground for painting on, right? So it'll never be truly fully satisfactory to be painting on. But yeah, I've realized that whenever I try to do this, even when I do many layers, it feels like it's very thin, kind of transparent. I have to do a lot of layers, and it's just a lot of work to kind of get something good going. So I don't feel like this was so what I've heard is that this is basically a rebranding, this is what multiple companies do this, where they have a product that can work for many different demographics, different uses, but people don't really know about it or don't really see it that way, like, oh, that's for workout muscle heads or whatever, for like protein shakes or things like that. But then they will rebrand it with a different name, different labels or something, so that people in that different demographic who could still use it, but maybe for a slightly different purpose, they will see it, they will be like, oh, I could use it for my watercolor. So they have this in under a different name in under Golden's main label, but I forget which equivalent this one is, but they have one for each of the 3 grounds that they include here. And when you go for the Golden version, they also have larger jars. So this is, I believe this is a small one. I think this is just the 8 ounce, right? And this is the only size that they have for core watercolor ground. But if you want more of it, like you're using a lot, like you're covering lots of big surfaces all the time, then it's a better deal and like easier to get the bigger bottles. They've got like 8 ounce, 16 ounce, 32 ounce, and like 2 liters or something, like a gallon or something size. Yeah, it's going to be a better deal by volume to buy the bigger ones of this, the equivalent product from Golden, for each of these. But for this one, I think I'm good on it. I want to find a good use for this somehow, but whenever I try to use it in exactly this manner, I haven't really loved it. But I think I will attempt some kind of painting on here. I'm going to attempt something on all 3 of them so that I can compare like the experience having been applied on a surface that they, at least the main company, finds good for it, because I've tried it on a couple different surfaces and it hasn't worked out. And then like applied in the way that they feel is a good application, like. And so, but then so like I said, this one didn't win me over, but this, I wouldn't have, with my experience with this one, I wouldn't have bothered trying to get any others. But this one, they gave a sample of their cold press ground. I feel like this should have been called the watercolor ground, because I don't feel like this is the best for watercolor. I feel like this, at least from how the texture feels and how it looks, this feels like it would be better for watercolor. And cold press is the default watercolor look. Paper. So this says it dries to a unique rough surface and looks like handmade paper with beautiful imperfections. With nooks and crannies to catch the watercolor, it'll allow for interesting and lifting effects you can't get with traditional paper surfaces. You can apply it with a palette knife by spreading it over a surface. And if you do it dry, the texture will be like rough handmade paper, and with water on your palette, you can run over it wetly to eliminate some of the roughness for something more like cold press. I'm not sure which one they did for this. I think it's probably the rough surface. It feels fairly rough, but I think it looks beautiful. It feels more thick and stiff and substantial, and I'm pretty sure I do remember this one. I think it's called like a fiber paper ground, and not paper fiber, but mineral fiber. I hear it's better for some reason. I can't remember the reason they gave, but this one I really like how it looks so far, and I want to try testing this with actual painting to see how well I like it, because I do like the idea of covering something. So one of the applications I tried to use the watercolor ground for was to cover this cover. This is a sketchbook that I made with by hand with Coptic stitch binding, and the covers, I tend to be pretty lazy and like, you know, very do-it-yourself with the covers. Like, pardon me. So for this sketchbook, I tried to use the watercolor ground on the cover so that I could decorate it myself, because as you can see, the cover itself is like from like a box of like a flower pressing kit that I bought. Nice and sturdy, but and like the flowers on this side are nice and pretty, but this side it's got labels on it, not so much. I covered it with several layers, but then this surface is so smooth, kind of almost plasticky. You could just, I literally peeled it right off. Like I could see that it was kind of weak and peeling on some edge already. So then I ended up peeling the whole thing off. So the inside of this and the inside of this, I did put one thin layer, but you can see it's fairly transparent. I did add a little bit of water to help wet my brush to make it move easier, but alright, I don't know how long I haven't been recording because my stupid phone is terrible. It's not terrible, but it just keeps randomly not recording. It just chooses when it wants to work. Alright, so I don't know when it last ended, but we're comparing neutral tint, coarse neutral tint from my original, my 24 set bottle, my replacement bottle, and then my two pans of my oldest bottle, my 24 set bottle, and I would also like to dry this in a pan, but I didn't think about that, so we're not gonna do that for now. So we're gonna test it first on here. We're gonna close this up actually, put it to the side because give it some space. All right. So first we've got this little sucker. Brush from the tube with this one. Okay, I don't want to use too much. I'm very stingy. All right, let's try that. And let's compare that. Well, first let's do the other bottle. Let's compare the two bottles side by side, fresh from the tube. Yeah, that's good. That's a good amount of paint. Coarse paints are always very pigmented, very concentrated, so I don't want to waste any. You know, even fresh from the tube, maybe it's because this one's drying. So let me add just a little bit more now. Yeah, as it dries, it does warm up a little bit. I feel, at least. So fresh from the tube, it feels pretty cool. Alright, so those two are fresh from the tube. I'm going to close these up now. And now this one feels warmer than this one. Probably because I painted over this one, so that paint is fresher. Now, we shall test from the pan. This is my oldest pan. A couple years old at this point, I think. Then this one's straight from the pan. It looks warmer than the other two. And there's a chance as well that maybe the pan is a little dirty from using it and having my dirty brush futz around inside and mixing with some other color. There's a chance. But I don't know. The only thing I've been using the neutral tint in that pan for recently is doing a bunch of these color tests. So that feels cooler to me than the new one did, much cooler. But now let's test with this one that has now dried up some compared to when I first tested it when it was still very fresh and wet. This one still feels cooler than my oldest pan, but it does also feel warmer than these two fresh from the tube. This is the same paint tube as the one right here, right? So it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way, but it be that way. Let's get some tint on the side here. And now, so now I see that this feels much cooler than this. So I feel like this has proven to me, and I haven't really been using this for much, really anything else other than tinting. This is pretty fresh, so I don't think that I've contaminated this well, and yet somehow it does look much warmer than the two fresh out of the tube. So I do feel like the dry pan, something about drying up in the pan is warmer. Maybe there's something about how, like, when I squeeze out a good amount of paint into the pan, it does get mixed up, so it more uniformly and evenly distributes the colors in the mix, thus allowing the yellow to come out more compared to these two, where maybe the blue is just bursts forth from the tube more. I don't really know. I also have, let me grab this from here. This is the neutral tint from this bottle here. This the newer 24 bottle in. So I'm gonna add fresh clean water in there, and you can see when it's dry that the yellow iron oxide, the transparent yellow ochre, has settled on the bottom, and as the paint is dried so much and it's such a thin layer that it's peeled away, and you can see that yellow oxide settled on the bottom. So I think the behavior of the different pigments together, there's definitely, like, they definitely want to separate a certain way. And you can see how blue it looks right now. We're gonna see after I mix it thoroughly, and I even see some of the magenta at the edges. I've covered it up now, but right now this looks very blue to me. But that was all dried up. You could see how it separated. So we're gonna test this last one. There's not much space left on here, but we're gonna test it. Right on the edge there. I'm gonna feather it out just a bit because I don't want it to mix too much. And that does feel more blue than the two here straight from the dry pans. But also, like I said, it does feel like it warms up as it dries. So we're gonna let it dry up before I make any more comments. But that does feel more neutral than these two, at least. I could do the hair dryer, but I want to see how it dries. I feel like when it comes to mixes where the colors have any separating behavior, where the pigments particles are particularly different, like there's ones that are much heavier than others or whatever, that letting it dry naturally and giving it that time to naturally spread or separate or whatever is going to probably make a different end result than if you blast it with a hair dryer and then dry it really quickly so it doesn't have that time. But yeah, I feel like as it's drying, still definitely much cooler than both of these, but also more neutral than these two. So I guess conclusion here is that if I want a more neutral tint, I should let it just dry in the pan. And for some reason, being in a dry pan makes it warmer for some reason. And then I guess as it's activated, it gets, if I go by my odd results here, it cools down again. Like it's rather uneven. So I'm feeling pretty happy with this experiment. I'm really glad to see that both of the paints bottles did warm up to a more neutral state when they're dry in the pan, since that's how I normally use them. So between if I want the good option to be fresh from the tube or from the pan, I'm glad that it behaves closer to how I want or expect from the pan. It's very interesting that straight from the tube seems to be the culprit for why sometimes one major culprit for why it can look much warmer, much cooler when it's fresh. Um, but overall, I think that this is one of those paints where it will overall be slightly uneven and chaotic, a little hard to predict the exact shade. It'll be a little bit different from use to use, from batch to batch. Even not batch to batch, just swipe to swipe from the same pan of the same paint. Um, that probably sounds bad, but I suspect that this might be true of other paints as well. Because even when I was comparing it against my Payne's Gray on here, I noticed my Payne's Gray felt like, from example to example, like these two, sometimes they felt different, like this one to this one to this one. Um, and I also, and I I still like that this paint doesn't have any black in there. Just conceptually, I feel like that does give it some more interest and some some unique character. It makes it unique compared to other ones. Like I just watched this neutral tint in the previous video I just recorded, and you can see compared to these, like I think there's a lot of appeal in this too because it doesn't granulate. It's not granulating like this one because it doesn't have that iron oxide in it, and it is more consistently neutral. I think it's going to be. So I think this is a really nice neutral tint as well, but I do feel like this is a unique mix. This might be one of the reasons why a lot of other companies don't bother and they just stick with the black to make their neutral tints. But even still, also I do feel like this does feel like a pretty good neutral, but it also still feels on the cool side of neutral. Pretty close to neutral though. So, I think both of these options, the Daniel Smith neutral tint and the core neutral tint, are nice, and for different reasons. And I'm glad that since it seems to have warmed up for my dry pans, that I'm not gonna worry anymore about like, did I get a defect. I've liked all the mixes I've made. Like I said, I showed my mixes. I've done extensive mix testing here, and I think they all look great. I think they do a really good job of retaining the transparency and clarity and vibrancy of the original color, while still making it darker rather than making it muddier and blacker by itself. So I'm happy. I do feel bad that I feel like I swindled them out of a unnecessary big tube of neutral tint. They didn't even send me the small one, and I'm like, you could have sent me a dot card with this neutral tint. Like if they sent me one of these suckers and then like right in the middle they just did a little neutral tint, that would have been fine for me. That would have been enough, so I could just see the difference. So I'm very grateful, and since I do like it, like no matter what, the core paints are really nice. I think they're my favorite brand overall, so far from what I've seen. So I think I will keep this on my main palette from now on, and I'm just gonna try, but I'm just gonna also try to stay working from dried up palettes, and just keep that in mind to try to keep it a little more consistent. Straight from the tube, it's feeling very blue. It's feeling very blue. This one as well, it still feels more blue than these two, but also, like I said, different from batch to batch. So there is my core neutral tint experiment.